the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'd like to feature a conversation I recently recorded with two veterans in our class of 2020, Connor Lott and Roger Wieland. I recently sat down with Connor and Roger to talk a little bit more about their experiencing transitioning from the military to the private sector, how they decided to pursue an MBA, and their advice for veterans who are contemplating a similar transition. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Connor Lott and Roger Wieland. Connor, Roger, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks. Happy to be here.
Hey, Brett. Great to be back again. Really excited to do this.
All right. So for our listeners at home, let's talk a little bit more about your backgrounds. What did you do before coming to Darden, and what are you doing currently? Let's start with you, Roger.
Absolutely. Happy to. So currently on my background, I started I was in the Navy for about 7 years. Prior to that, I was at the United States Naval Academy. So before my transition, I knew nothing about the civilian world except what my dad did for a living. So from when I left, I'm now currently what I'm doing right now after my transition, I'm now working at Deloitte Consultant as a senior consultant, focusing on our federal clients.
Yeah, and so, who am I? I'm going to start pretty meta here, but I'm an EMBA in the class of 2020 here at Darden. I currently work at Gartner in our advisory practice, where I work with human capital executives on challenges they might have across a wide variety of things like employee engagement or post-M&A integration. I served as an infantry officer in the U.S. Army from 2012 to 2017. Took the usual, ROTC route in through college. Did the whole, Ranger School and Airborne thing. Then spent most of my time leading a platoon in the 101st Airborne. Decided in late 2016 to transition out and began my journey away from the sheltered confines of the military.
All right. So as Roger noted, this is a conversation maybe a little bit about the transition process from military to the civilian world, also to business school. We're going to talk a little bit about how you thought about timing of pursuing your MBA, how you thought about transitioning, what was next for you, how you considered maybe the executive formats, thinking about working while pursuing your MBA. So lots to cover. And this is actually in parallel with the conversation we've had with Jim Collins as well for servicemen and women about thinking about coming to business school, thinking about next steps in their career and some questions they might have. So we also have that as a perspective too. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the transitioning out process and how you thought about what you wanted to do next. Where did you begin with that process? All right. So you knew that your time as a service member was up. How did you start to narrow in on what you wanted to do next? Let's start with you, Connor.
Absolutely. So I think there are some natural inflection points in an officer's timeline, especially. I'm not as familiar with the enlisted side, but those lend themselves to a transition. So in my case, it was after getting promoted to captain, which is usually after about 4 years of service, and really choosing between transitioning out or staying in for a few more years because you're almost obligated to take on additional responsibilities and more command positions after that. So then I was looking at a kind of mid-30s exit, and ultimately I saw more earning potential and kind of relative experience gained in that time by going to the private sector. And I also knew I wanted to get my MBA by the time I was roughly 30. And so I made the jump away from the Army. And I settled kind of on the executive format program at Darden because I felt like I could accomplish both sides of the coin by getting work experience while also getting my MBA by the time I'm roughly 30. I think that experience is probably mirrored by Roger, but maybe there's some different nuances there from your own experience, Roger.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are absolutely 100% correct. When you kind of, as an officer, you kind of have that period where I have to either stay or go. I think for me, it was a little bit harder because I did really like what I was doing in the Navy. To give a little more background about what I did in the Navy, after I left the Naval Academy, I went through officer similar to Connor, and I was a surface warfare officer. So I got to drive around on really cool ships for 4 years, and then after that, I had to go to what we call a shore duty, whereas I get stationed somewhere in the DC area to do a support activity instead of going out having fun on the water. So when I got to this shore duty thing, that's kind of like the timing of when as a naval officer, you're saying, hey, I have to make a decision here. Kind of mine is a little bit more of a personal thing, just because I did want to stay in, but also I was newly engaged. My wife and I were talking about what's going to be the next steps of how, where is this going to leave us? She was a gem to say, hey, I'm up for the travel. Let's go see, hey, are we going to live abroad? Let's go do that. But really, like Connor, what you said to bring it back is just, hey, you do have those transition points and you're trying to figure out like, okay, where's the best thing to go? One quick one quick story I want to just highlight to kind of help me to put this in perspective is I remember going to a retirement ceremony for a senior enlisted who was actually apologizing to his son of being 12 years old that he didn't get to spend enough time with him while he was away. So it was kind of like a thing that kind of made it a little more personal than it just was, is it just career-wise for me or could I go either way? And it kind of helped me with my decision point. And to kind of go to the next part is, hey, you know what? I had to think about, hey, if I get out, what works well for me? Like, what did I like in the Navy that I could ultimately bring into the civilian world to say, hey, I like these parts. What kind of career falls to that? And when it came to business school, kind of get to where I am today here at Darden is to the point where it's like, I didn't know what was right first. I knew I had to go to the school. So it was kind of like similar to Connor. Like, I knew I had to get there at one point or another. Just figuring out, hey, was it at first or did I get job experience first? Like it was kind of, to me, they could have been flip-flop, but I'm actually happy with figuring out to learn what's out there first before using business school to hone my skills.
So let me ask you a little bit of a sort of variation on the question. Oftentimes we'll talk with military candidates on the phone, and it's a little bit of, I don't know what I don't know yet. So both of you managed to find jobs in the private sector. Roger, obviously at Deloitte. Connor, you're at Gartner. How did you go? You mentioned you thinking about what you liked from your service career. How did you go about sort of thinking what kind of companies might make sense, what kind of roles might make sense? Trying to think about maybe some of our listeners who are in that position of like, I don't know what I don't know. What kind of questions should they be asking? How about you, Connor?
Yeah, so I really thought about the moments in my military experience where I had the most joy and saw the most job satisfaction, I guess. And those moments were, for an example, leading a successful briefing in which I could help influence the strategy of an organization, or working with my soldiers in my platoon to accomplish a mission on an operation. And that drew me back to different industries that are really people focused, that are really looking at the greater picture of an organization and its health and strategic alignment. So that kind of led me to the narrowing down of, well, I don't think I want to maybe go into, say, manufacturing, or I don't want to perhaps go into maybe logistics, and I want to be more of the kind of consulting or advisory role. But when I approached job search, it was basically a shotgun pattern, not recommended. So I threw out my information, and I networked with so many people when I decided to make that jump, and I submitted the paperwork. So I also, I was, spreading myself fairly thin, which I would recommend anyone to curate a list of ideas of companies or even sectors that you're really, really interested in that are aligning with those moments that matter in your current military occupation or role. And then really dig deep into those companies or those roles and understand the culture and where you could find the best fit. Or also on the obverse side, looking at the schools that are going to really help you, attain the skills and attributes you're going to need for the future, whether that's full-time or part-time or executive format. I got lucky. I landed a summer analyst position at the Motley Fool, where I got to look at stocks all day, which was a passion of mine. And then I found a role at Gartner because I kept with that strategy of, looking at what I really cared about. But again, I don't think I went the right way, possibly.
How about you, Roger? What was your journey like?
So at first it started off as a shotgun, similar to what you said, approach. But I think eventually I narrowed it down. I'm kind of a checklist type of guy. So I said, what did I like in the Navy? I loved, one of the coolest things that I got to do in the Navy was every 2 years I knew I was going to do some new job. And that was really important to me because it kept me engaged, kept me learning. And then I started saying, like, if that were really what I loved about the Navy, how can I translate that into the civilian world? And I said to myself, what jobs are like that, right? And luckily I had a bunch of friends in the DC area who recently left. They started talking to me about consulting. And the more they talked to me about it, I'm like, oh, wow, this is a good place to start to see, as I say, like having my first real job, being a real boy, right? And seeing what's out there. And what the cool part about the consulting that they talked to me about, my peers talked to me about, is that I had those opportunities to see what else was out there. So I could learn about something in marketing. I can learn something about strategy, something about operations. So it gave me the point where I'm like, I can do these different projects to go to these different areas. Now, how did I get there? First, like I mentioned, I had figured out what I wanted to do what I liked in the Navy, working to translate. And then the next thing I started doing is like understanding what a network was. And I think that was one of the things I didn't understand in the Navy. I think I'm getting a better grasp of it as I progress in my professional world, to the point where in the military, a network is, in some cases, the guy I can call in the middle of the night to make sure I can go get something. Well, in the professional environment, it's almost to the point where it's like, how can we both collaborate and work to do something to achieve a goal, right? So I think learning that and talking to people who have been in that similar situation or are close to those companies, and that helped me guide me through the transition to the point where, hey, this is what this industry does. This is what this industry does. Not really focusing on so much company-wise, is to understand what the industry is. And then from there, I kind of took to networking and then took it one more step further to say, hey, out of these industries that I liked, what are the companies that I would like to be a part of? By similar to what Connor said, like start deep diving into those companies and saying, hey, what's their culture? What they do? Where can I fit in? I'm still a very mission-based person. So I think that when I landed in Deloitte, it was a great position for me because I'm still being able to support our federal clients in a way where I'm helping them impact their mission, which was, if you think about it, a lot of folks who come from the military have that passion. Either it doesn't have to be in the DC federal place. It could be anywhere. It's like if your passion is to, help create a brand for somebody in the marketing department, that's something to do. You're helping their mission to become expand their brand.
So I'm curious about sort of following up on Roger's point about networking, because oftentimes I'll think when talking with folks, man, there must be people that who've already made this transition, right? Who are out there, in the world, who've gone ahead of you, who might have advice. I can imagine, though, if you've been in a really hierarchical world where you've been promoted in a way that may not have required networking before, it can feel a little bit unfamiliar. What's some advice that you have? Roger sort of started to touch on a little bit about how you might think about networking effectively, or what networking actually means. Connor, what are your insights about that?
Yeah, I was at first had a lot of trepidation about approaching either colleagues that had already transitioned out, especially if they were senior B in rank, or reaching out to someone who maybe was a mid or senior level executive at a company, even though we may have had some sort of, collegial or professional ties, from the Army or from school. But I think Roger can definitely back me up on this. Like, people, if you go out and ask them the reason why behind your ask and just trying to get some time and information from them, well, 99.9% of the time always respond and always will provide you what you're trying to do, and also will likely help you along that journey. If you're, if they see that you're a, smart, driven, caring person. I don't know. I mean, I know this is the same at Deloitte, but, I talked to several people at Gartner who were way, way higher up than I ever am right now. And they were so welcoming about just providing me information, putting me in touch with other people, kind of creating that literally that network effect, where I could find the right role eventually and be at a spot where I'm very happy now.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think, Brett, when you mentioned the hierarchy, it's hard you don't want to break that. And now that everything's so flat, you realize that how many people actually want to help you. And it's hard to think about, because I think in the military, you were trained to figure it out. I think it's ingrained in us, which is great. I'm happy that, but sometimes it's hard to ask for help. And part of networking is, asking for help, understanding things like that. So I think finally having that one person that says, hey, I got you. Here's who you talk to, right? I remember this. It's a friend of mine that who was local in the Indianapolis area, and we know each other through mutual friends. And we sat down, we had dinner one time, and I says, here's what I'm thinking about doing. Oh, I got you. You need to talk to this person? I'm going to send an email right now. And you go, wow. People just are so, just, I guess to sum it up, people are willing to help if you ask. I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to networking. It's like, don't be afraid to ask for help. And yeah, that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I think there's this tendency to think about networking in this really transactional way. Like you're asking this person do something very specific for you, like hook you up with a job or something. And in fact, it's a lot of just conversations, right? It's
absolutely
informational in nature. Ultimately, you're just sitting with that person, learning about what they do, what advice that they would have. Is there any next step, any person that they might suggest? I mean, that's what I've found to be successful. How about y'all?
Absolutely. I mean, I truly take pleasure when people reach out to me to ask just about talking about my career or talking about things they're considering, whether it's maybe coming to Darden or looking at making a job switch, even though I probably don't have the right type of experience to counsel them. I'm flattered by that. And I love the kind of back and forth of conversation and information sharing, because it doesn't have to be transactional. It can be purely collegial, and it can be something that can help both of us in the long run, because it provides me ideas for what they're trying to do and opens my mind to potential new experiences.
Yeah, 100%. Brett, I think you called it right when it says like it's transactional. That's the kind of like the bad rap it gets, but it really is just having a conversation. Like I remember I forgot who told me this, but when you're working with folks, you ultimately want to work with people you like being around, right? It's almost like during the interview process here at Darden, I just like being around the people during the whole interview process. Like, this is great. These people are fantastic. This is a cool spot, right? Same thing applies to work. It's not just what can I do to help you to get me this job? It's more just, hey, it's good. I want to work with you because I think we can do some great things. And at the same time, it's just, I just want to hang out with you at the same time. Like, you could be my friend. Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely that element to it of just wanting to build relationships. And I think just as much as, this person's helping you, you just never know how you might be able to help that. But everybody's making connections, LinkedIn, elsewhere, expanding their networks. You never know where all this stuff is going to come back. So I'm curious, something that we started to talk a little bit about before we kicked off the podcast. It's about timing, when to get an MBA, right? So I'm sure both of you considered maybe getting an MBA, just starting with maybe more of a full-time residential program immediately upon separating. And you both chose to go work and then pursue your MBA in an executive format. Curious, some things that you might suggest that people think through, some questions people might ask themselves as they think about which format, which structure might work best. How about you, Roger?
So when it came to transitioning out, I did 100% think, do I go to a full-time program, or do I go out in the job world, go work for a little bit, and then go to a program like what we're in right now here at Darden in the executive format. For me, it sounds a little binary, but some of us, by the time we're leaving the military, not all of us are single, ready to go, take on the world. Some of us have families, some of us have mortgages, some of us have expenses, things like that. So you kind of think about it and you go like, do I have the opportunity can I actually go for 2 years and not work? If you have that opportunity, think about that. But for me, it was to the point where twofold, I've got responsibilities as a result. And two, it's to the point where I don't know what's out there yet. So when I go to a full-time program, what am I supposed to focus on, right? So I think by the time I've been working for about 3 years before entering this past summer, and I said to myself, okay, by this point, I think I know what's out there enough to either through friends, colleagues, or just what my current work is doing, where I can go into a program and say, okay, this. I don't know this very well. I'm going to focus on this, and I'm going to ask those questions. Is it focusing towards accounting or to finance or to marketing or operations, things that I just don't know, instead of just, fire hose effect right in the residential. So that's kind of how I looked at it.
That's such a good perspective, Roger, especially given kind of the familial aspect that I didn't even consider for a second. But for me, it was I just didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I probably still don't. But I knew that I wanted to kind of contextualize my MBA experience, like you were saying, Roger, in the fact that I needed to get some work experience. So I wanted to be able to take the lessons that I was bringing from Darden and bring them back to my day-to-day work and better understand what my role was within my company, and also look at it in a more macro perspective of, this is how outside forces affect my firm or Roger's firm, how my role evolves because of those outside forces, perhaps, and then also gain ideas through the classes that we're both taking and discussions that we both have, and be able to evolve our thinking about other opportunities out there, other ideas to cull. So really for me, it was, I want to get some real business experience on the kind of front line of my company and be able to then use my MBA to shape my future designs. And, whether it's staying at Gartner or, just launching my own venture, this helps me refine those opportunities for, the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah. It was also pretty cool too, that I noticed when we entered, besides learning in the classroom, which was really cool, the just talking to you, talking to the folks within our class, I have learned so much more in addition to what I'm already learning right now from them. Like, we have classmates that we have surgeons, we have physicians, we have, people who started their own businesses. We have everything you could possibly think of, and hearing their different perspectives is ultimately helping me grow as a professional in not just what I'm doing right now, but just understand, like you said, that macro view of things.
Yeah, I think that whether you're at Gartner or Deloitte or any other company, you kind of get siloed into your company's thinking, possibly, especially your team's thinking, because you see these people or this company every single day. And so this helps us break out of that silo and kind of get away from that perhaps distortion of what's really going on outside of our own companies and our own lives. And so, yeah, the exchange of ideas and opinion, mostly outside of classroom, but also inside the classroom, has made the experience just incredible. And also, I think, being that we're both, former veteran, former military service members, former veterans, but it really helps us also maybe break away from those traditional minded, military norms that we kind of abide by for most of our formative years. And that oftentimes can lead to, not open-mindedness or progressiveness in our thinking, and allows us to be much more accepting and open to so many different ideas and out there that we never would have considered before.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I learned so much from our classmates. It's actually really, going to residencies are awesome, because 1, you get to see your friends, 2, you get to see what everyone's going on in their lives, and 3, the conversation that goes on, you just strive. You just want it all the time.
So I'm curious, did either of you look at any of the veteran transition programs that existed at companies? I know that there's some pathways that are potentially out there for folks. I know the larger banks, some of the consulting firms, at least have a channel that veterans can consider for the application process. Did either of you look at that? Any tips for thinking about, whether that could be a good fit or not?
Yeah, so I did. Gartner has I would say, a pretty good veterans program because I'm a member of it, that I hopefully help veterans come and enjoy our company. I think, though, that there are so many resources out there for veterans, regardless of service or number of years of experience, that can help put people that maybe in positions they never would have thought. It doesn't have to be the traditional pipeline to a consulting firm or to a large financial institution or to a manufacturer or a program management spot. There are smaller opportunities that put veterans into tech firms that are out in Silicon Valley, or nonprofits working in rural areas. It's really, number one, understanding the moments that you cared about in your military service, and then finding and doing your due diligence and finding resources that can help you get to those things that truly bring you passion, I think. I mean, Roger, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, same thing. So I went through the junior military officer transition program when I entered Deloitte. And it was really nice because it just kind of puts a level playing field with everybody. It's a safe space. You're going into, it's falling similar to how you would transition, like how you would change jobs in the military. So it's comfortable. And then eventually you get into the firm and you start learning all the things that we do. I can honestly say is when it's been 4 years. This past March 2nd was when I started my new career in consulting, and I can just following LinkedIn and talking to my friends who have transitioned. I don't know about you, Connor, but have you noticed how much is now out there for military?
Yeah, it's incredible.
There's a couple friends of mine who have done startups, who are now helping those people do what you just mentioned, who are doing that. So it's almost like I wish I was doing it again to, like, one, really relive the past, learn from my mistakes, but at the same time, there's so much opportunity right now. And I feel so much more well equipped now. And I feel, part of this is also too on, the service member leaving is you gotta get curious, right? You really have to get curious to the point where, you'll be surprised that, there's a lot of transition programs, that most companies, right? Said it, like most companies do. And then you start you start seeing the military networks. There's plenty of junior officer networks within LinkedIn and Facebook that you could do that and find other opportunities that are around there. Yeah. It's wild how much is out there now.
Any question, I don't think any question is too foolish to ask when you're in the process of transitioning. Maybe like, how much do you make? Like, that's probably not, maybe table that for a later, time, but like, you should always, as you're thinking about transitioning, you should always be having conversations with both these programs that can put you into find, firms in whatever sector, but also other opportunities that, again, that align your passions for what you want to do with your life potentially. And, nothing is really off the limits because this is your new journey, and leaving something that is as structured and kind of orderly as the military it can be a very scary step. I was absolutely terrified for several months. Roger was too. He's shaking his head.
Oh, yeah.
So, don't ever be afraid of reaching out and talking to people, regardless of whoever they are, whatever industry they're in.
So, kind of leads me to the next questions on my mind about what's one thing that you wish you would have known? All right. So there's been a few mentions of hindsight and things might have done a little bit differently. Thinking back on who you were then, if you could give that version of you one piece of advice, or here's something you should probably know, what would you mention? Roger, you have an idea?
It goes back to the power of a network and actually what the network is. Because I mentioned it earlier in the podcast that as a naval officer, your network is the closest person that you can help to get your part you need to get fixed on your ship, or help you with the next stage of your certification or something to that nature. To how do I build professional relationships with folks on not just on that transactional, but on that personal level, that we're at one point or another in our lives, we might be able to, use that to build our own business or to help each other down the road, or just have somebody to vent to and have questions about. I think understanding the power of a network and what it was, and how to grow that, and have the different aspects of the network to the point where there's your social network, there's your strategic network, there's your work network, and if you can make the two of those, if you make your work and your social combine, tell me how to do it, because I'm still trying to figure that out. But I think understanding the purpose and the importance of a network and how to build that, and understanding how big it should be, because I think another misconception that I had was I have to talk to everybody, but sometimes you don't. It's the size is up to you, and I think that's the biggest thing for me. The other thing I wish I did a little bit. I wish I knew was to know where to look for those other. We talked about those transition programs that are out there outside the companies and what the Navy or the Army supplied. knowing where those were and where to find those things, because I ended up finding them later in the game and in the process. And I was like, oh, okay, this is great. But am I too far ahead to jump into this? Just knowing where the resources are too. And I think it goes back to what Connor said. There are no dumb questions during this process. Some people might say there are dumb questions. There's no dumb questions in this process. So ask away.
So I'm curious where you might find some of these resources. So did you sign up for LinkedIn? Was that a new thing for you? Would you recommend Facebook, Google searches? Just curious where you might start to try to hone in on some of these veterans programs that are out there.
So, I mean, obviously LinkedIn is a tremendous resource. I would caution against relying on it too much, I would perhaps because of, title inflation and or people are consistently, moving in and out of jobs. So by the time you're able to connect and chat, sometimes that they're no longer at the company, just things to consider, but it is a tremendous resource. But I think also beyond veterans programs, sites like Poets and Quants is absolutely fantastic. And understanding then if you do want to go to business school, kind of getting more of the ground truth and then of what that school is like, what are the, the teaching styles like, potential earnings after graduation, candidate profiles. That really helps you as a future candidate for Darden understand where you might fit in best, and what program also is the best fit for you. I don't know, Rod. I mean, are there other programs you're thinking of, Roger?
So I guess mine is a little bit different because going to the Naval Academy, there is a career conference they hold a couple times a year where it got me to the first, gave me a first look of what programs are out there. And then you see tents for, hey, what is this program? It's another similar type of conference that does this. And then you kind of meet another person at the tent and you go like, oh, I help. Our job is to transition vets into the technology sector. We help vets transition into the financial sector. So it kind of happened there. So I had a little bit, maybe a one up on that just because of having the service academy connection, but also to the point where, at this point, they're so known now. If you probably would Google, I haven't tried it. We should do it right now, but just Google, veteran transition programs. And I think you'd see a bunch, especially here in the DC area too. And also a lot of the things now too is like when I was transitioning out, we had a military transition program too, where they kind of gave you some of this information as a starting point. But it goes back to, I think I said earlier, it's like being curious. Like what's in your alumni network, what's in your your military network, and then also searching around in LinkedIn. You can, you start scrolling on LinkedIn, you'll be surprised what you can find just based on your profile that they give you. I believe some of those programs even popped up for me just based on my, how the search functions were going on LinkedIn. It's like, oh, you should check out this conference. I'm like, I will.
So Connor, what's one thing that you wish you would have known, or, if you could go back and talk to your former self that you would advise that version of you?
I wish I would have known the power that a mentor or a few mentors can have on your career, whether it's in school or at a occupation, and really your life. If you have people who will champion you throughout the exploration of a career switch or, transitioning from the military or applying to school, it truly makes all the difference in the world. I mean, my former battalion commander wrote one of my recommendation letters to Darden. I was consistently in contact with me about, how he can help. He follows up with me via email now to see how things are going. I tell him about my school, and I know that that's someone I'm going to be not just friends with, which is weird because I still call him sir, but someone who's going to be a champion for me for the rest of my life, and I will be the same for him if he ever needs my help post Army. And I wish that I had leveraged more and found more mentors while I was in the service, so that as I transition out, I could just keep my outlook on the civilian world a little bit broader, and then uncover maybe some potential opportunities that we're not just the rote, consulting or financial services or some program management routes.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. To find the mentors while you're still in the service, you kind of just sparked something right there, Connor. It was because of how I think it's structured. It's really hard to do that, and you don't understand the value of it because, from similar with you, every few years you're leaving, and you might not see that person for 5-6 years if you're lucky. Maybe on the same, for my case, same ship or same job in the Pentagon possibly, or here in DC. So understanding when people actually take an interest into you and being aware of that. I think since leaving the military and transitioning, I started to see that. I think it's become, I don't know, maybe we're just too cold sometimes in the military. We're just like focused on the mission, but now now leaving is to the point where now out, you become more self-aware of that stuff. It's like, oh wow, that person really wants to help me out.
Absolutely.
I shouldn't say no.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know at both of our companies that there are people who will willingly give up their time and passion for you, for your career advancement, for your just inquiries about this sort of thing. And again, it like you said, in the military, it's just so different. And maybe we put it on ourselves and to be more just mission focused, less maybe people or networking focused. But, I think both of us have been able to kind of see the light and understand the power that mentors and people who really can influence your life have.
All right. So the question of questions, I think we ask this for every current student we have on the pod. So thinking sort of just generally now, not talking to your former self, just one piece of advice, sort of, all right, you got military folks listening here. What's something that somebody can do today? Or, if someone's thinking about Darden, what's one piece of advice that you would share? It can be general, it can be specific, whatever you think would be helpful.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, this is always a little bit of a curveball question. So, one of the things I think that is really cool, and I'll vamp a little bit, so fill some time for you so you can reflect. We have a veteran executive students at Darden Club, which we have 6 clubs, organizations that are specific for executive format students. I think of this as a bit of a community within a community. I'm guessing that both of you are at least members of that club, or at least generally connected. So that's a resource that's available here. We also have 2.5. I know that number seems odd, but we have 2 dedicated career advisors and another career advisor who splits time between executive formats in the Master's in Business Analytics program. That's another resource. You have all the executive format alumni, and there's a formal mentoring program that students can subscribe to and actually opt in for. You also have the broader Darden alumni network. So if you're wondering about some of this networking, where you might get started, these are very obvious places. So, for example, our veterans group has been fantastic and has agreed to sort of help out with outreach to any vet that starts an application here at Darden. Look in our LinkedIn groups, see other people that share your service background within our executive format classes or at Darden generally. There's also the Darden Military Association. And then certainly reach out to me, any of my admissions colleagues. We can absolutely help you get started. So make that networking a little bit more familiar, at least specifically to Darden. So now, what advice would you have for our prospective students?
I've gathered my thoughts now, Brett. So I would also suggest, beyond all those fantastic resources, and you nailed all of them right on the head. Please just talk to Brett. Number one, talk to Brett. He will answer any questions you have, and no question is too out of bounds. But also, whether you have already transitioned or have friends who are in other occupations post-military and are also attending a program like Darden's Executive Format MBA, talk to them about that balance, because the person who recommended Darden I work with at Gartner, he was the one who set me up with you, Brett, and as part of the initial kind of conversation. I did not have as much information about this program until I spoke with him, because we're in a similar role at Gartner. We work together, on the same floor every single day. He was the one that said, "Why would you just not look at this program? It's fantastic. I'm doing it. I'm also an Army veteran." I was like, well, gosh, that's a sell right there. Let me go talk to Brett. I don't know. I mean, Roger, what are your thoughts?
I think it's kind of similar. I think the first time I really wanted to dabble in the idea of school, I started figuring out what's the school I want to go to, and Darden was my number one. So I says, who should I talk to? I didn't know anybody in the program at the time, so I didn't have the access you did. So I think I just emailed Brett, cold called him. I just said, "Hey, great to meet you. I'm Roger Wieland. Love to hear more about the program. What's the next steps?" He's like, "Come to a class." I came to a class, shook hands, met a few other folks. One is actually in the program, right? Two of them were actually in the program right now in our Roslyn section, not the Charlottesville. But saw them and then just kind of started the conversation from there. I ran into people I didn't know were in the program, and I started talking to them. And I go, "Hey, I didn't know you were in this." He's like, "Oh yeah, I've been doing this for the past year. Coffee, let's go talk about this." And then it kind of I came in through Brett, who was, hey, Brett, I've talked to you about plenty of times. You've helped. You've helped both me and definitely Connor through the whole process of, just asking the question. There are no even bad questions when it comes to this process to understand what is a good fit for you.
No, and we obviously take, we know this is a very important decision and there's a lot on people's minds. And we do think that relationships are really important, particularly for this school and this particular program. The culture of the program, it's very, very much a tight-knit community, place where relationships matter. And so try to make it a little bit more personal as you go through the process. So schedule a conversation. Definitely come for a class visit at some point. It's a case method school. You need to see what that looks like. That's sort of free for all in the discussion. Obviously, choreographed so to speak, and professors up there sort of asking Socratic rhetorical questions, but nevertheless, everybody's opinions coming in, and it's discursive in nature. So see that, have lunch with the current students, and as Roger notes, you'd be surprised how many people you might actually know who either have a Darden connection, did the program themselves, know someone who did the program. I find that our students are very, very well connected and are great about sharing their time, just like Roger and Connor have done today. So, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom and expertise and experience.
Brett, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. And Roger, always great rapping with you, man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Brett, thank you again. This has been fantastic, and I hope we were able to help a few folks out there.
And that was my conversation with Connor Lott and Roger Wieland, two veterans in our class of 2020. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's ExecMBA @darden.virginia.edu. Until next time, thanks for listening.